In San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, the other tweet heard around the world: why Tesla CEO Elon Musk is in hot water once again with the SEC. Plus, Facebook under fire. New details are emerging about the thousands of content moderators it's hired through third parties. Is there a better way to flag extremist posts and misinformation? And Apple wants to help you catch some Z's. The company is testing a new feature on its smartwatch that could give it an edge in the sleep tracking market. But first, to our top story. Elon Musk's Twitter fingers are at it again, and the SEC has noticed. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has asked a judge to hold Musk in contempt for violating a settlement struck last year with regulators. Musk is required to get approval from Tesla for social media posts and other writings. The SEC says he breached the agreement last week with a tweet about Tesla production. On February 19th, Musk tweeted that the electric car maker would make about 500,000 cars this year. Just a few hours later, he revised that, tweeting meant to say annualized production rate at the end of 2019, probably around 400,000, i.e. 10,000 cars per week. Deliveries for the year still estimated to be about 400,000, Annualized production rate around 500,000, deliveries around 400,000. Now, in response to the SEC's request, the judge Musk sent yet another tweet saying, quote, SEC forgot to read Tesla earnings transcript, which clearly states 350,000 to 500,000. How embarrassing. Joining us now in New York, Bloomberg's Matt Robinson, who follows the SEC. With us in San Francisco, we've got Bloomberg's Dana Hull, who of course covers Tesla. And on the phone, we're joined by Garrett Nelson of CFRA, who's got a hold rating on the stock. So Matt, I'll start with you. What are the most extreme potential penalties here?
Well, first, the SEC has to the judge has to agree with the SEC that he did, in fact, violate the settlement from last September, October. From there, it could reopen sort of the negotiations that they set on the penalties and, him stepping down from the board membership. So it opens up sort of the can of worms that they had closed previously, and it's sort of yet to be seen about, how far the SEC could go in terms of, trying to go after Musk.
Now, Dana, walk us through the actual numbers here. Does the earnings transcript say 350 to 500,000 cars? And if so, does that give Musk a defense?
I mean, Musk's defense is that his tweet was not new material information, that it was repeating what he'd already said on the earnings call. But then he clarified the tweet, and it took 4 hours to do that. And I mean, that's a bit of an issue. I mean, he's not supposed to tweet without all of his tweets being vetted by this sort of established securities lawyer.
Garrett, shares barely moved. Investors don't seem concerned. Are you?
We sure are. It's funny. Tesla shares, investors seem to be kind of immune to this soap opera and the never-ending news flow coming out of Tesla and Elon's erratic behavior. But we think that the judge is going to require that the company show that they have oversight of his social media posts, which to us, it doesn't appear there's any oversight in place at all. So we think that the judge is going to come down hard on Elon. Most likely additional fines, perhaps social media restrictions. But the worst case scenario of Elon having to step down as CEO and leave the company is probably not going to happen.
Now, Dana, Musk supposedly has a Twitter sitter.
Yes.
Essentially, there is someone at the company, a lawyer, who supposedly reads his tweets, but Tesla has never disclosed the name of this person. What does this person actually do? And did this person read these tweets?
Yes, so this person is a lawyer in-house at Tesla whose job includes monitoring Musk's tweets. And we know from correspondence between Tesla's lawyers and the SEC that were disclosed yesterday that he said this tweet on February 19th. This designated Twitter sitter read them, immediately reached out to Elon, met him at the Fremont factory. They drafted the subsequent tweet together. So this person actually is sort of doing their job. The question question is, he's still tweeting sort of without them, and maybe he just needs a little bit more training in what's material information and what the agreement says he can't do. But then he tweeted again overnight that the SEC didn't read the transcript and is embarrassing, and he clearly does not have respect for the agency. I mean, he's made that clear numerous times.
Matt, what should we expect from the March 11th hearing?
So, the judge is going to take both sides, and I think from reading the complaint, the SEC is highlighting the fact that the tweets need to have pre-approval, right? Someone needs to look at them before it's sent out. And I think that's they focused on that, and I think that's what they'll present to the judge, is saying, hey, this is black and white. Someone needs to see this before it's out, and Tesla's already admitting that no one did. So I think that's the SEC's argument, and from there, the judge will decide whether or not he violated the agreement.
Now, Garrett, the irony is that the point of the original tweet was to point out that Tesla produced 0 cars in 2011, and look how many they're producing now. Production numbers have actually beat estimates over the last several quarters. Are you at all concerned that these side issues could be a distraction to the actual numbers and what Tesla actually produces?
Well, it's no small feat what they've accomplished, going from 0 cars to the production rate that they're at today. But I think that the real issue is the oversight, the settlement that he entered into with the SEC last fall, and whether they are in compliance with the settlement. So that's the real issue.
So, Matt, how does this potentially affect the previous settlement?
This could rip it up potentially. I mean, I don't think it is. I think part of the reason that the way the SEC structured this is that they did, keep Musk running the company. They don't want to be in a position of picking executives, but they want, investors to be, to have, reliable, factual information coming from, their most famous, CEO.
Let's talk about investors, Dana. And you talk to a lot of Tesla investors who. Many of these investors we should expect have bought into Musk, the bold, rule-breaking CEO. Do they like it when he does these things?
I mean, I think Musk always kind of tangles with authority, right? I mean, this is a man who hung up on the chair of the NTSB over an autopilot investigation. He sued the Air Force for the right to fly his rockets. He, complained to NASA when a competitor got a contract. So he's always kind of bucking authority and doing things his own way. And like the whole ethos of Tesla is that they're this challenger disrupting Detroit. So the fact that he's bucking the SEC and thinks that they're on the side of the short sellers, I guess it's not surprising. And I think if investors have concern, they probably talk to Elon directly. They don't need to vet that out through the media.
So, Matt, the question is, how far could and would the SEC actually take this?
It sort of depends on how he reacts. I mean, obviously the tweets overnight saying, oh, the SEC's, not paying attention, they're doing embarrassing work. The agency does take that into account. I mean, even the 60 Minutes interview from last December where he said, I don't respect the agency, they cited that in their complaint saying, he's clearly flouting a settlement which he willingly agreed to.
All right, indeed. Won't forget those words, what he said in that 60 Minutes interview. Matt Robinson for Bloomberg News, who covers enforcement, Dana Hull, our Tesla reporter, and Garrett Nelson of CFRA will continue to track what happens here. Well, AT&T has beat back another attempt by the Trump administration to undo its $85 billion purchase of Time Warner. A U.S. federal appeals court ruled that the Justice Department failed to show that a lower court made a mistake when it rejected the government's antitrust arguments. The government's next merger decision is the T-Mobile Sprint deal. We'll be following that one, of course. Coming up, Huawei fights back, taking center stage at MWC in Barcelona. Huawei pokes fun at U.S. intelligence. We will discuss next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. At Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, now called MWC, the battle against Huawei took center stage. Literally, during the keynote address, Huawei's rotating chairman, Guoping, defended the company against the U.S. efforts to ban their 5G technology. Take a listen.
Huawei has a strong track record in security for 3 decades. serving 3 billion people around the world. The U.S. security accusation on our 5G has no evidence, nothing.
To discuss, I want to bring in Bloomberg executive editor for global tech, Tom Giles. And he didn't just deny the allegations, he also poked fun at the NSA. He said, prism, prism on the wall. Who is the most trustworthy of them all? If you don't understand that, go ask Edward Snowden.
It was hilarious. He is making a joke in front of the entire world.
And just a reminder, it was under the PRISM program that the NSA had backed doors into U.S. tech companies. And
Exactly.
Snowden exposed it.
And he's basically calling the U.S. a hypocrite. He's saying the U.S. has not given any evidence of us, Huawei, providing backdoors, giving China special access to global telecommunications networks, which the U.S. at Mobile World Congress and to anyone who will listen has been saying for years now, don't use Huawei equipment. It will leave your networks vulnerable. There's this risk that they will somehow give China access to your state secrets, to your IP, your intellectual property, your trade secrets, your sensitive, communications between governments, et cetera, that would create a national security risk. This is the U.S.'s statement. U.S. officials made that same statement again today in Barcelona. But all along, Huawei has been saying, where's the evidence?
In making a joke, though, is Huawei taking a risk that it's going to ruffle more feathers? You've got many other countries deciding whether to ban Huawei as well or buy their technology in spades.
Right, and remember, the U.S. right now is in the midst of a couple of different legal actions against them. One, they say they violated a trade embargo against Iran. They've arrested the CFO, and she's under arrest in Vancouver. There's this whole extradition thing going on there. They've also accused Huawei of stealing trade secrets from T-Mobile, taking the fingertip off of this robot. And so those are two cases that the U.S. is prosecuting against Huawei right now. It is very risky, but I think Huawei recognizes that the stakes are very, very high. As you pointed out, big telecom companies around the world, not the U.S. U.S. has said ixnay to that. But around the world, big telecom companies are spending billions of dollars on this 5G build out. And what they've told us and what they've said to U.S. officials is, we actually kind of like Huawei equipment. It's not that bad.
Right. We had several interviews
and it's cheap
with mobile leaders from Europe at MWC, and they don't seem that upset about Huawei.
And they're saying to the U.S., like, really, let us buy what we want to buy, and where else are you going to go?
And that said, President Trump is thinking about taking it a step further, using an executive order to enforce a ban, challenging competitors here in the United States to step it up and build technology that is equal to what Huawei has.
Exactly. But we are on the cusp of 5G, and you can't afford to wait for some brand X to put together its 5G technology if you're concerned about falling behind China.
Compare what's happened to Huawei to what happened with ZTE, a company that the U.S. almost destroyed, and then through this amazing life-saving vest, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, it was an agreement that was kind of hammered out between the U.S. and China, and I can't remember exactly what his words were, but something to the effect of, Donald Trump said something about how he doesn't want to see all these people lose their jobs, and so there was kind of this last-minute deal put together, and we've seen from results from ZTE that they have come back. Those shares are doing well, and ZTE is finding customers out there.
So what's next in the Huawei versus U.S. saga? We know that the CFO is awaiting extradition potentially to the United States.
That's right. So we're supposed to get Canada's decision on whether or not to extradite Meng Wanzhou on March 1st is when we're expected. That's like the deadline. All signals seem to be that that's going to happen. The other thing that we're waiting is an arraignment on the 28th in the intellectual property theft case. So those two things coming very much to a head, and they're also against this backdrop of ongoing U.S.-China relations. It's all very exciting, and we're going to be bringing you that story to Bloomberg viewers as it happens.
All right, Bloomberg Tech's Tom Giles. Thank you for that update. Coming up, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak speaks out in an exclusive interview what he thinks about Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. And Bloomberg Tech live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology and follow our global breaking news network TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. One key takeaway from JP Morgan Investor Day, Jamie Dimon's bet on tech. The bank spends $11.5 billion a year on technology. That is a figure that smaller banks just can't compete with when it comes to offering clients the latest and greatest on web and mobile. Dimon seems to buy into the theory that this will lead to greater consolidation among regional lenders. Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak says he's lost a lot of respect for Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg after he saw how Zuckerberg testified before U.S. Congress. Bloomberg's Yusuf Gamal Eldin sat down with Wozniak in an exclusive interview and also discussed the future of tech regulation, startups, cryptocurrency, and Apple's next big thing. Take a listen.
I look for different technologies, and those are ongoing life things. Very often when I'm associated with a company, I urge them to hold off as long as you can from an IPO, because then you're no longer running your own company. Mm-hmm. The shareholders are, and your decisions are a lot different. So I'm not really looking at any specific technologies or companies, and I wouldn't think about them in terms of how do we get to an IPO anyway. It's just not how I think. I only think of how do we make a product and what will it do that's good for society.
Well, let's pick up on the tech angle. You've said in the past that you believe that Bitcoin is going to be the world's single currency, or you hope that it is going to be the world's single currency. We've seen massive value destruction in Bitcoin. Are you still a believer in that? Is that still a workable model for you?
I'm not sure I can buy that we've seen massive value destruction. I think we've seen massive value creation. There was, I think, a period of time, psychology will often drive like stock market dips in that. Oh my gosh, got to get out now, The psychology factor is kind of a fear thing. And there was this idea that, my gosh, Bitcoin might go up to $40,000 and it went to $20,000. I had a lot of Bitcoin. I had some Bitcoin, but I did never as an investor. I only had Bitcoin to experiment with and find out how to buy and sell things around the world, how to travel, how to find restaurants that would accept Bitcoin, that sort of thing. And so when it went up high, I said, whoa, wait a minute. I do not want to be one of these people. I don't invest in any stocks. I've never used Apple's stock app. I don't want to be one of these people watching the price of Bitcoin, so I sold out. And I don't know where it is now, but wherever it is, it's way over what I bought. And I still experiment with it on new Bitcoin devices and all.
We've seen tech leadership across the board get into quite a bit of trouble online. And I'm thinking here of Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. I'm thinking here of Jack Dorsey on Twitter. When you see these issues, and you've spoken about this quite clearly in the past, what is the message that you want to send when you see these scandals?
First of all, I think Jack Dorsey's doing a lot more than Mark Zuckerberg to correct it. I lost a lot of respect for Mark Zuckerberg watching him speak and answer questions and supposedly taking some steps that are nothing. He would not one nickel or one penny of Facebook's income. And I don't trust that. Now, there's a company in the social web called Foursquare out of New York. And Foursquare, you rate different restaurants and places you go and companies, and they keep a lot of data. They have been offered millions of dollars for their data on the users, and they've turned it down because it was unethical. So you can make a choice and still you can draw the line at a good place and not a bad place. I quit my Facebook account, and I've really never used Twitter.
Is it time for the government to get more involved? I mean, there are a few legislative efforts, but clearly that needs to be taken up more seriously.
Probably. Regulation is good. Regulation is a thing that says companies will not do certain bad things, or governments will not do bad things. We have a Constitution, and the Bill of Rights in the Constitution, everyone has written, the government shall not pass a law. Congress shall not pass a law. It says the government will not do certain bad things. And that kind of regulation we need some of when things are getting bad. And the United States is way behind Europe on recognizing a lot of these issues of data privacy and all.
We've got the Mobile World Congress underway, 5G and many other technologies in focus. What are you most excited about?
I used to track a lot of stuff that was going on in the mobile world and cell phones. Every day I wanted to look, what's new is coming out in cell phones, keep up with it, and I'd buy the latest products. Many of them I had. And now I've lost that interest. I don't know why. I'm more interested in things like the new television sets that are coming out, the 4G, 5G television, 8G televisions, 8K televisions. I don't know that I'm going to benefit from 5G or that I really feel the need for an increase in bandwidth, cellular bandwidth right now. So that's not going to impact me much. Things I'm interested in electric cars, where they're going, what their benefits are, what their problems are, and the infrastructure for them. Right now, yeah, so I'm sort of at a low point. But I'm waiting for Apple to come back in the game too.
Okay.
Yeah, with something really new and outstriking.
Is that what needs to be done from Apple's side? Given what we've seen from Samsung, there's a sense that Apple's falling behind in the innovation game.
Well, Apple has been the leader for quite a long time in a few areas, such as Touch ID, Facial ID, and easy payment with a phone. They were the leader, and everyone else had to follow. But they're not the leader in things like the folding phone, and that worries me because I really do want a folding phone. It's one of those new technologies that does catch my attention. Yeah. So Apple, but Apple always has surprises. Working on a lot of things in the background. They just got so successful with the iPhone that was their whole business for a long time. Now they're branching out into a lot of their services are very good. And I'm looking for Apple TV to expand and come on. Right now, I kind of prefer my Roku.
Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak there speaking exclusively with Bloomberg. Well, Etsy's fourth quarter sales surpassed expectations, sending shares to their highest levels since the company's 2015 IPO. Analysts were especially impressed that full-year guidance beat expectations. The upbeat earnings come even as the Brooklyn-based company scales back on its marketing spend in the first quarter. Coming up, a sleep tracker may be coming to the Apple Watch, how it will work and what it could mean for wearable competition. That is next. And later in the show, we'll speak to former FCC Chair Tom Wheeler about his new book and how public policy can keep up with new technology. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology Global Link, where we join Bloomberg Daybreak Australia to bring you the latest in global tech news. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco with Heidi Stroud-Watson, Sydney, and Sherry An in Hanoi at the site of the summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. I want to get started with the global tech stories of the day. Sherry, what are you following?
Emily, let's get you started with the U.S. Cyber Command saying that it thwarted a Russian attempt to interfere in last year's midterm elections. The military says it disrupted internet access for Russia's Internet Research Agency. The strike against the state-sponsored trolling factory was first of its kind and aimed at preventing interference with U.S. elections. That's according to the Washington Post. Now, ARM Holdings could be looking to IPO again. Simon Segars, the chip designer CEO, said he plans to hold another IPO in about 5 years. ARM first went public in 1998 before being acquired and made private by SoftBank in 2016. Segars said being a private company let ARM invest significantly more than it could have done as a public company. And Alibaba founder Jack Ma is now China's richest person. According to Bloomberg data, Ma is now worth $42.5 billion, placing him ahead of Tencent CEO Ma Huateng at $35 billion. The richest man in Asia remains Indian oil magnate Mukesh Ambani with $48 billion. Those are the top global tech stories we're watching. Heidi?
Sherry, well, as you well know, one of the side effects of the U.S. attempts to ban Huawei's 5G technology is that it's driving interest towards other telecoms. At least that's what Nokia CEO Rajeev Suri told Bloomberg TV at MWC in Barcelona. Take a listen.
We're watching the situation closely. We're observing. Of course, this is for governments to decide. We will be there for our customers when they need us. We are getting more interest. There are concerns. There are also, some uncertainties, and we just watch the situation closely.
Well, this is Huawei unveiled a brand new, very expensive new phone at MWC. Let's bring in Bloomberg's tech reporter Mark Gurman in Los Angeles. Before we get to these pricey phones, Huawei front and center at MWC, poking fun at US intelligence. But it was interesting hearing from phone executives really kind of speaking with one voice and saying they need access and diversity when it comes to suppliers. And potentially the Huawei ban could actually risk the delay to a 5G rollout.
Right, so Huawei has two main parts to its phone business. One is they provide 5G equipment for infrastructures and carriers, around the world, or they intend to. The other thing is they make these phones. They introduced the Mate X, this $2,600 foldable phone. And overall, Huawei makes some cool phones. They are very well received where they are on sale. Their 5G technology is also fairly advanced. So that gives all the carriers a real conundrum. One, what if their consumers want to buy Huawei phones that governments and others are not allowing them to sell? That is the carriers. Also 5G, what happens when customers are really asking for 5G? The carriers that offer that 5G functionality are going to have a competitive advantage. So it feels like in terms of both innovation in the technology and the hardware space, as well as the advancements in the 5G and carrier networking space, Huawei really has the carriers in not so great a position.
So, Mark, all of this negativity around Huawei and the networking equipment the U.S. bans in other countries, is that impacting the handset business at all?
Right now, it does not appear to be. You see Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint all discussing their 5G rollout plans. Verizon said they're going to be in 30 cities for real 5G by the end of 2019. T-Mobile has indicated they're going to be in a handful of cities by 2019. You're going to see Sprint and AT&T and others really show more progress in their 5G networking across 2020 and then after that. So in the US at least, it does not appear that Huawei is having an impact on 5G networking. But that's a different story outside of the US, where some of the international carriers are concerned about their 5G prospects because of the inability to carry 5G equipment from Huawei.
Mark, I remember the days when, we'd recoil at the idea of $1,000 for a new iPhone model, a $2,600 foldable phone from Huawei. Who's going to be paying for this?
So what we've seen since 2017 when Apple announced the $1,000 phone, the iPhone 10, like you said, we've seen prices skyrocket even more. A couple weeks ago, Samsung announced their Galaxy Fold for about $2,000. It's actually $1,980. Of course, they would price it $20 under that $2,000 threshold, and now about $2,600 in the US equivalent for this folding phone. Who's going to buy it? I don't think many people. I think that price is very much out of reach, but that's early adopter pricing. This is what it costs to make. This is what they're going to have to sell it for. This is why they think it needs to be so expensive, because of its cool functionality. But overall, I don't think you're going to find many people paying for it. Even a diehard tech fan like me, I don't think that's something that I would shell out that kind of money for.
Mark, what did we learn when it comes to the big new thing for wearables at MWC this year?
Wearable technology has been slow at MWC this year. The bigger wearable news that we did get was from Samsung a week ago alongside the Galaxy Fold. They announced their new devices, but we are seeing a lot of the smartwatch makers, whether that's Fitbit or Garmin, reporting an uptick in their smartwatch, people enjoying their smartwatches and buying up their smartwatches. Of course, Apple released their latest smartwatch in September, the Apple Watch Series 4.
Meantime, Mark, you've got a news story out reporting that Apple is testing a sleep tracking feature for the Apple Watch. How will this work? What do you know about it?
Right, so before Apple launches a new health or fitness-related feature on the Apple Watch or any of their other devices, they put it through its paces both on outside people that they bring into these labs they have outside their Cupertino campus. They have multiple fitness labs, one for swimming. They have these special chambers that can simulate very hot weather conditions, upwards of 100 degrees, weather conditions that are very cold, bicycles, all sorts of oxygen equipment. So now they're doing the same for sleep tracking for a future version of the Apple Watch destined to launch either next year or this year.
All right, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman for us there, reporting on Apple and Huawei. As always, thanks, Mark. Much more ahead. Stick with us. This is Bloomberg. Speaking at MWC in Barcelona, FCC Chair Ajit Pai said he wants to promote U.S. leadership in 5G by modernizing regulation. He also said the agency is working to lower regulatory barriers in the telecom industry. But will the U.S. be able to compete in the global 5G race and continue its campaign to ban Huawei equipment in other countries? Tom Wheeler is the former chair of the U.S. FCC and author of a new book, From Gutenberg to Google, The History of Our Future. He joins us now from Washington. Mr. Wheeler, great to have you back here on the show.
Hello, Emily.
In the book, you argue that the tech revolution is actually a story we've seen before. But what are the risks of the tech revolution that we might not be prepared for?
Well, I think the lessons of the previous tech revolutions is that a failure to engage is folly. And it goes to such things as what you were just talking about insofar as regulation. There were new rules that we established at the beginning of the industrial era, which made that era successful for both capitalism and for consumers and competition. We're in a similar kind of situation now where we need to be establishing new rules. And when you hear the chairman of the FCC, for instance, saying, oh no, regulation is bad, I mean, he overlooks the fact that, even Adam Smith, the father of the invisible hand and laissez-faire, said you've got to have some basic level of rules for a free market to operate.
So what are the risks of that if we don't have the rules that you believe we need to have in place?
Well, the reality through history is that those who have taken advantage of the new technology have not only brought forward new good services, but also have made rules for the use of that technology that benefit themselves. Look at the experience we're having right now with privacy. There's kind of an alchemy that goes on where your private information and my private information gets captured and becomes owned by a third-party company, whether it be a network or a platform that uses that network. What are the rules for that? How do we figure out what the basic standards are going to be? And we need to step up and do that, not just deny that there are issues.
Federal privacy legislation apparently is coming. What would you like to see be written in these rules?
Well, let's hope it's coming. You know that when I was chairman of the FCC, we passed privacy rules for the networks that were repealed by the Republicans when they got in office. I think we need to make sure that we empower consumers. I think we need to make sure that we have expectations on the companies that go back to the old common law concept of a duty of care, that the job of the companies collecting the data needs to be that they make sure that they anticipate and mitigate any potential harms, number one, and number two, that they don't hoard that data to create new cartels that prohibit competition in the marketplace. And I think what we're seeing today is just the opposite of both of those goals.
Do you think big tech companies need to be worried about regulation?
I think that big tech companies ought to be welcoming regulation for, like I said, even Adam Smith said that you need to have rules. And, you know, what you're seeing right now, for instance, is that the tech companies are coming to Congress and saying, hey, let's pass a federal privacy law that preempts the states. Because after they were successful in the Trump administration in eliminating all rules, states moved in. And now they're going, oh my goodness, the absence of rules at the federal level we're finding is harmful for us. So I think that they would welcome rules, and then we need to make sure that consumers and competition are protected in the development of those rules.
Meantime, on the subject of 5G, you've got Chairman Pai saying he wants the U.S. to be a leader on this. You've got President Trump talking tough on Huawei, saying he's considering an executive order to enforce, a U.S. ban on Huawei equipment. Do you think these actions toward Huawei could backfire?
Well, I think it is very important to worry about the cybersecurity of our networks. Throughout history, again, going back to the points I making from Gutenberg to Google, throughout history, networks have been attack vectors. I don't care whether you're talking about rivers or roads. They've always been attack vectors. So why should we be surprised when we find that the network of the 21st century, digital pathways, are the new attack vectors? And we need to make sure that we are protecting those. I was disappointed that what the Trump FCC did as soon as they came in was to repeal the activities that we had put in place in the previous FCC to establish cyber protections for 5G and to have an expectation that the FCC would have a role in that. The new chairman came in and said, no, we don't have a role in cyber, and eliminated the kinds of things that we had started to put in place.
Former FCC Chair Tom Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler, always good to have you with us. Check it out, From Gutenberg to Google, Mr. Wheeler's new book.
Thanks, Emily.
Still ahead, Facebook has thousands of people policing content on its platform. Now the public and employees are voicing fresh concerns about the toll the work is taking. This is Bloomberg. New reports about the working conditions of Facebook's content moderators are causing the social media giant to once again defend its practices. In a message to employees and on its public blog, the company defended outsourcing of content moderation, hiring some 15,000 workers who flag misinformation, graphic violence, terrorist propaganda, and revenge porn on their platforms. I want to bring in who else but Bloomberg's Sarah Fryer, who of course covers Facebook. And so what's new here is that Facebook employees themselves are complaining about how Facebook handles content moderation. What are these employees saying?
Employees are saying if this is so crucial to our business and how our users feel about our product, why is this something that we outsource? And the response from management is like, look, we really need to scale this up very quickly. We need to make sure that these workforces are flexible and can move to different needs. And of course, Facebook thinks over time that artificial intelligence will get good enough that it will be able to reduce the need for these contractors in the first place.
But over time, I mean, like decades, it's going to take a long time.
Right now, hate speech, for example, is only 38% effective detection by the AI, but other categories like nudity are much better. Of course, then you have to look at like, oh, is it flagging like a naked statue or is it flagging a person? They've gotten a little better at parsing out those things, but still the most crucial things that content moderators are looking at are the gray areas, the things that really are subjective to make decisions about, and Facebook tries to cover them all in its internal rules, but it's just really impossible to get some consistent policies to go across this entire global user base.
Now, you've reported over the years on the conditions that these workers who are moderating this content endure. It's a tough job. You're looking at potentially, very upsetting, very offensive things all day long. Are the conditions for these workers getting any better?
The Verge had a tremendous report on Monday explaining that at times these contractors can't take bathroom breaks. It's very difficult for them to deal with their mental health issues as they see people shot to death live and they have to decide what to do about that within seconds. It's very hard for them to have a consistent approach to the policy and still move very quickly. I mean, this is a tough job that they're doing, that they have, 3 weeks of training, but then they're scarred for life. Some of them even told The Verge that they have started believing the conspiracy theories that they sort through on Facebook about, 9/11 or Sandy Hook or any of these things that we've seen become at the core of internet discussion in the dark corners.
Now, Facebook has talked up the tens of thousands of employees it's hired as a result of election meddling, misinformation, fake news to combat all of these things. Are these third-party content moderators counted in those numbers?
Yes, those numbers are not all full-time employees. Some of them are contractors, which allows Facebook to reach that goal very quickly, but also means that they have to deal with this expanding workforce that is not going to possibly handle all of the trillions of interactions that Facebook users are posting every day. And the amount of video that gets created, the amount of content that gets created is just massive. And then the contractors are relying on people reporting things, and now they have the AI also flagging things to the content moderators. It's just a tremendous amount of volume, and things change all the time. What's offensive in one country may not necessarily mean anything in another country, and so they have to make sure their policies are keeping up with the changes on the internet.
Tough job on both sides. Sarah Fryer, thank you so much, as always. Well, fitness startup Peloton is preparing for an IPO that could value the company at $8 billion. While Peloton has created a following with customers snapping up stationary bikes that cost more than $2,000, some industry watchers say the real money is in its class subscriptions that cost $40 a month. So is Peloton a fitness startup or a streaming service for a fitness audience? I want to bring in Bloomberg's Olivia Zaleski in the newsroom for us. Olivia, which is it?
I've really been thinking of Peloton more as a media company, not as a hardware company, which I think a lot of people, they hear about the $2,000 bike, they think that that's so expensive. But really, I think the real money to be made for Peloton is in its subscriptions for yoga classes, boot camps. It even has a class for running. Those cost about $19.99 a month. And apparently, the company is selling a lot of them.
So what kind of growth is Peloton seeing in the bikes themselves and the subscriptions?
We don't know what the growth looks like. They haven't revealed those numbers yet. We do understand, though, from sources at the company that the subscription for the non-hardware product, for the classes, is doing extremely well. And that seems that investors are very, very interested in that. So they're starting to value Peloton as more of a media company.
They raised $550 million in a funding round last year that valued the company at $4.15 billion. The CEO was on the show at that time. What is the outlook for the IPO here?
Well, incredibly, they're actually looking to raise to have their IPO between $8 and $10 billion, which is a huge jump there. So clearly, they feel very confident going into this IPO. They seem to think that investors will jump in at $8 billion or more. So we'll have to see what happens.
So who is Peloton's competition exactly?
That's a very good question. I think it's really sort of like the gym, Equinox. They're targeting very wealthy people who can afford the $2,000 bike, but they're also now targeting people that can't afford the $2,000 bike, that just want to be able to go to a SoulCycle class once in a while, but maybe do that at home with the stationary bike that they already own. So they're trying to reach everybody.
So how does this fit into the tech IPO pipeline this year? I mean, we're waiting on Lyft potentially to happen very soon.
Oh, there are so many IPOs happening this year. There are a lot of them. So this one we should expect to be happening, early summer is what it looks like. But we really, again, don't know the exact timing. We're hoping that Lyft releases its S1 this week, that we should see Uber going. So there are a lot of things happening at tech IPOs.
Right, and of course we're going to be watching for Slack's direct listing as well. Bloomberg's Olivia Zaleski in the newsroom for us. Thank you so much. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. On tomorrow's show, we're going to be speaking with Alibaba Vice Chair Joe Tsai from the Stanford Business School Sports Summit. Lots to ask him. Jack Ma stepping down as chair in 6 months. How is that transition going? And what is his outlook on the U.S.-China trade war? Is he optimistic about a deal? And Bloomberg Tech live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Technology. Be sure to follow our Global Breaking News Network TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.